We have more for your ears only. I'm Catherine Herzog.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. The press likes to paint us as 9 scorpions in a bottle. That's just not the case. That was Associate Justice Antonin Scalia to Piers Morgan on CNN, denying personal friction on the Supreme Court and specifically any rift between himself and Chief Justice John Roberts over the decision upholding health care reform. Now this.
Music from the era of silent movies sets the stage for our segment on giant Jacob Reuben Erlich. The son of German-Jewish immigrants at the turn of the 20th century, and standing an astonishing 8'6" tall, making him one of the world's tallest men, Erlich took the anglicized name Jack Earle for roles in some 50 silent films, then as a sideshow freak, touring 14 years with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, before winning renown as a painter, poet, and sculptor, dancer, musician, and vaudeville entertainer.
In a new book titled The Long Shadows, The Story of Jake Erlich, his nephew Andrew Erlich, a Phoenix psychologist, draws on 10 years of research into family lore, newspaper archives, historical documents, and recordings to tell the inspiring story of how his Uncle Jake overcame crippling shyness and prejudice, as well as depression and the physical challenges of his superstature. And for your ears only, we're pleased to have Andrew Erlich on the line now. Thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
You describe your book as a true-life novel. Why not a straight biography, and what parts are fictionalized?
At first, I tried to write this as a biography, but David, there was so much that I couldn't know about Jake's motivation and the dialogue that he had with others, as well as the struggles that he went through. So I had to put myself into his voice. I chose to do it as what I call a true-life novel.
Well, we mentioned your research into family history for this book. Did you remember actually meeting your uncle or the first family stories you heard about him?
I have one memory. He died on my 3rd birthday, actually July 18th, 1952. But I had one memory, what we in the psychology business call a screen memory. And Jake was throwing me up in the air. And my grandmother, her name was Dora Erlich, she had 3 sons, and she was so nervous. She was screaming out her 3 sons' names until she finally, got the right one. Mm-hmm. And she said, "Jake, put him down. He's going to hit his head on the ceiling." Well, she had a point.
Talk about Jake's beginnings. How did he get from El Paso, where he was born, to Hollywood, and how was he discovered? Not that he was easy to miss.
By the time Jake was 7 years old, that's when he really started to grow. He was 6 feet tall. By the time he finished the 6th grade at age 12, according to his teacher, he was 7 feet tall. So he became very, very depressed. There was no way to really stop or explain what was going on with him. So Jake started to encounter a lot of taunts and teasing, so he was taking back alleys to avoid the other kids and the rocks they threw at him because of his height. So he got very depressed. My granddad took him to California, supposedly for a fishing trip, because Jake liked to fish. And word spread in the silent film community about this boy giant. And a couple of pioneers from the silent film industry spotted him and offered him a contract in silent movies.
Why did Jake eventually leave Hollywood to join the circus? It sounds like a step down in both comfort and money.
Jake was filming his 49th movie, and silent film actors used to do their own stunts. And he was precariously balanced on what they called a studio funny car. So the car is going about 45 miles an hour, goes over a pothole. Jake loses his balance, and he falls 14 feet to the ground. Once he does, a piece of wood breaks off a scaffolding that's attached to the same contraption, hits him in the back of the head. He wakes up in the hospital with a fractured nose and blurred vision. And first the doctors say, well, the vision is a problem from the Klieg lights, these powerful lights that they used on the sets in those days. But 3 days later, they had to change their diagnosis when Jake goes completely blind. Finally, they figured out he must, in fact, have a brain tumor that's grown to the point it's pressing on the optic nerve. Well, they start treating him with X-rays, and those X-rays shrink the tumor, and paradoxically, Jake stops growing and his vision comes back. But in order to go back to Hollywood, he realized he'd have to keep doing his own stunts, and that was just too dangerous. So that's the point. When he's recuperating in El Paso, that Ringling Brothers circus comes through town, and in one of the most embarrassing moments in circus history, they discover Jake. Jake wanders into the sideshow, and he's a foot taller than the professional giant.
Let's talk about his style and achievements as well as a painter, a sculptor, photographer, and even a poet.
So Jake's traveling with a circus, and the circus spent a lot of times in those days at Madison Square Garden. They spend a month there when they open their season. And Jake is there, and he's wandering through the basement of the old Madison Square Garden where they kept the menagerie, the animals, and the sideshow. And he sees a young woman sculpting one of the circus animals, and he stops, and you can imagine she's taken aback by someone of his size, and he asks her what she's doing. He says, "Can I try?" And he picks up a piece of unused clay, and in a few moments, and she's watching him, and she's amazed by the size of his hands and his fingers. So each hand spans 2 octaves on a piano. Each finger is as big as a silver dollar, so you can imagine her amazement. But then when he finishes, she's more amazed by what he's created, this unbelievable likeness of a giraffe. So she is a very wealthy socialite, and she is friends with one of the Ringling brothers, and they, as a result of what she saw, they arranged for Jake to have a scholarship to art school. From that, he goes to art school, doesn't like it, finds it really confining. They're teaching representational art, meaning, like it's photographic. You paint what you see. But he wants to be a modern artist. So he leaves, and he begins painting on his own. He finds modern teachers. He says, "I don't want to be one of those purple mountain painters. With bold strokes and bright colors, I want to embrace the world of modern art." So he starts to paint. He continues to sculpt, award-winning photographer, and a poet.
Dr. Andrew Erlich is the author of The Long Shadows, the story of Jake Erlich, the silent film and circus giant who was his uncle. It's available at Amazon.com and TheLongShadowsBook.com.
And this has been For Your Ears Only.